The moment I unlocked my front door that Saturday, an eerie quiet greeted me. It was the kind of silence that presses on your chest, suffocating, even as the Georgia sun poured through the windows. I could not shake the feeling something was off, and as I stepped into the living room, my eyes landed on a red box sitting innocently on the coffee table. It was not just a box, it was a Pandora's invitation. The sharp contrast of its vibrant color against the muted tones of my furniture made it impossible to ignore. Curiosity and dread twisted in my gut. It was only 1 p.m., far too early for wine, but I poured myself a glass anyway, grasping for courage. As the liquid slid down my throat, the past began to rear its ugly head. Memories of my small-town childhood filled my mind. The lazy afternoons, the familiar faces, and the predictability of it all. Life back then was simple, unlike the tangled web I had managed to weave as an adult, but the red box screamed for attention, demanding to pull me away from nostalgia and into a reckoning. I carried it upstairs, my heart pounding like it had back in high school when I snuck out for the first time. Setting the box on my bed, I rummaged through my closet until I unearthed a larger container. It was my secret time capsule, a collection of moments I could not let go of, no matter how much they hurt. The red box would fit perfectly alongside the others, but something made me hesitate. I opened one of the older boxes first, revealing a postcard and a CD. The message on the card was bittersweet, pinned in handwriting I knew all too well. When I give my heart, I give it all. Otherwise, I'll never fall in love. The memory hit me like a freight train. It was from Alex, the one who taught me what heartbreak really meant. Sliding the CD into the player, the room filled with the soft strains of When I Fall in Love by the Letterman. As the music played, my mind drifted back to the day Alex had sent me flowers at work, a grand gesture that made my coworkers swoon and turned me into the envy of the office. I had read the card aloud back then, laughing as my friend Angie teased me about finding the one, but life had other plans, as it always does. I sat on the edge of my bed, the red box between my hands. Its weight felt unnatural, like it carried something far heavier than the cardboard and ribbon it was made of. My breath hitched. What was it about this delivery that felt so final? I scanned the room as if searching for clues. The clock on the wall ticked, slow and deliberate, amplifying the silence. My pulse was louder. No return address, no sender name, just my name in bold, precise lettering. It was no ordinary package. It was a message, and I was certain of one thing. I wasn't ready to read it. The urge to open it was as unbearable as the fear that coiled around me. Jessica, I whispered to myself, gripping the box tighter. You've faced worse. My own voice felt alien in the stillness. Memories clawed their way to the surface. Years of choices and regrets, of Alex, of Matt. Matt. His name was like a storm I could feel but never outrun. The guilt was fresh, even after all this time. I decided to place the red box next to the others in the hidden compartment of my closet. Each of those boxes was a chapter of my life, snapshots of who I used to be. I didn't open them often, too much risk, but this new one, it felt alive, throbbing with an energy that demanded attention. My hand hovered over the lid. I yanked it away. No, not yet. Grabbing the older boxes, I stacked them neatly, each color-coded with a memory I wasn't ready to confront. But when my fingers brushed against the blue box, a cold shiver snaked up my spine. I hadn't touched this one since Matt left. My heart ached, but my curiosity was stronger. I opened it slowly, and the scent of lavender wafted up. My stomach twisted. The postcard inside was crisp, its edges too sharp, its words too clear. Jessica, you made your choice. Remember that when it falls apart. My fingers trembled as I read it. Matt's handwriting was unmistakable, every letter carved with purpose. Attached to the postcard was a CD. I slipped it into the player, my chest tightening with every moment of silence before the music began. The first notes of Bob Seger's Against the Wind filled the room. It was a song Matt loved, a song we used to dance to in our living room when things were good. Back when he looked at me like I was his whole world. As Seeger's voice crooned about chasing dreams and losing touch with old friends, tears blurred my vision. How had it come to this? The sound of breaking glass shattered my trance. I jumped to my feet, the red box clattering to the floor. My head snapped toward the door, heart pounding. The house was empty, wasn't it? My breath came in short gasps as I crept toward the source of the noise. Each step down the hallway felt heavier than the last. When I reached the kitchen, I froze. The wine glass I'd left on the counter was shattered, the deep red wine pooling like blood across the surface. But it wasn't the broken glass that had me rooted in place. It was the back door, wide open, the curtain billowing in the breeze. I hadn't opened that door. A million thoughts crashed through my mind. Had someone been in the house? Were they still here? My phone was upstairs, and the idea of turning my back to get it made my skin crawl. Grabbing a knife from the counter, I scanned the shadows, every creak of the house amplified in my ears. The front door was locked. I double-checked it. But the back door, I shut it quickly, turning the lock with shaking hands. The neighborhood was quiet, eerily so, as if the world outside had stopped in tandem with my panic. Returning to the red box felt impossible, but ignoring it felt worse. What if it was connected to this? What if it held answers I needed right now? Forcing myself to be brave, I carried the box back upstairs. My bedroom felt different, warmer somehow, like someone had been there while I wasn't. Stop it, Jessica. You're spiraling. I sat down on the bed, the box in my lap, and this time, I opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper, folded neatly, and another CD. The handwriting on the note made my blood run cold. I'm closer than you think. Will you run again? Or will you finally face what you've done? The world tilted, and I had to steady myself. My throat burned with the question I couldn't say aloud. Who sent this? Sliding the CD into the player, I braced for the song that would play, for the message it would carry. As the first notes drifted into the room, my heart stopped. It wasn't a song. It was my own voice. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? The recording on the CD kept replaying in my mind. Hearing my own voice, fragmented and disjointed, left me raw and exposed. It was a compilation of conversations I had no recollection of having, snippets of laughter, whispers that felt too intimate to be shared. There was no clear timeline, just fragments of a life I thought was private. Someone had been watching me. Someone still was. The dawn broke, bringing no comfort, only the grim reality of another day in this waking nightmare. The red box remained on the bed, a damning presence I couldn't ignore, but was too terrified to confront further. I couldn't tell anyone, not yet. Who would I even trust with this? As I dressed for the day, I felt a chill, the kind that burrows deep into your bones. My eyes darted toward the window, half expecting to find someone standing there. Nothing, just the quiet street outside. But the red box had made one thing clear. I wasn't alone in this. At the office, I went through the motions, plastering on a smile that fooled no one. Angie, my closest coworker, cornered me at the coffee machine. Jessica, you look like you've seen a ghost, she said, concern written all over her face. I didn't sleep well, I replied, keeping my voice steady. Angie wasn't convinced. You've been off for weeks now. Is this about Matt? Matt. His name felt like a knife twisting in my chest. I shook my head, brushing past her. I'm fine, Angie. Just tired. But Angie wasn't the kind to let things go. If you ever need to talk. I'm fine, I snapped, a little too sharply. Her eyes narrowed, and she stepped back. All right. Just offering. I regretted the outburst immediately. Angie didn't deserve my anger. But what could I tell her? That someone was sending me cryptic packages, breaking into my home, and playing games with my mind? That I deserved it? By lunchtime, I couldn't focus. The red box, the note, the recording. They gnawed at me like termites on wood. When my phone buzzed, I nearly jumped out of my chair. The message was from an unknown number. You always love to run, Jessica. But what happens when there's nowhere left to go? The phone slipped from my trembling hand. I stared at the screen, the words etched into my brain. Whoever this was, they knew me, intimately, too intimately. My stomach churned as I dialed the number back, my fingers shaky. The number you have dialed is no longer in service, the automated voice said, cold and indifferent. I slammed the phone down, drawing a few curious glances from my coworkers. I ignored them, grabbing my bag and rushing out of the office. Back home, the silence was deafening. I paced the living room, my mind racing. Could this be Matt? No, he wasn't the type. But Tony was clever and vindictive, and he had every reason to make my life hell after what I did to him. It had to be him. I grabbed my phone, hesitating before dialing. The call rang 3 times before he answered. Well, Jessica, to what do I owe the pleasure? His voice was calm, smug. Cut the crap, Tony. I spat. Did you send it? Send what? He asked, feigning innocence. The box, the note, the recording. I know it's you. He laughed, a sound that made my skin crawl. I have no idea what you're talking about, but it's cute that you think I'd waste my time on you. I clenched my teeth, frustration boiling over. If you're lying, I swear. You'll what? Cry into another glass of wine, he interrupted, his tone sharp. Face it, Jessica. You made your bed. Now lie in it. The call ended abruptly, leaving me staring at the screen. If it wasn't Tony, the realization hit me like a freight train. There was someone else. Someone I hadn't considered. The air around me felt suffocating. I needed to get out, to breathe, to think. Grabbing my coat, I bolted out the door. I drove aimlessly, the city passing by in a blur of lights and shadows. Every face on the street felt like a potential threat. Every car that followed me too long made my pulse quicken. My mind was racing through the possibilities, landing on one terrible question. What if it was Matt? What if, after everything, he wasn't the man I thought he was? I pulled into the parking lot of a coffee shop, my hands shaking as I gripped the steering wheel. The only other person who knew me this well, who knew my every fear, my secrets, my regrets, was him. The red box was still in my house, waiting, but now, I wasn't sure if it was a warning or a promise. By the time I got back home, the street was pitch black, save for the occasional flicker of a porch light or the glow of a TV through a neighbor's window. My headlights swept across the driveway, and my heart lurched. The back gate was open. It had been closed when I left. I killed the engine, gripping the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles turned white. Every fiber of my being screamed at me to drive away, but I forced myself out of the car, my feet crunching against the gravel. The wind rustled through the trees, carrying with it the faint creak of the gate swaying on its hinges. I scanned the yard, the shadows stretching long and menacing under the dim glow of the streetlight. Hello? My voice came out weak, barely a whisper. Nothing. I stepped closer, my breath fogging in the crisp air. The gate groaned as I pushed it shut, locking it this time. The sensation of being watched prickled the back of my neck. I turned abruptly, scanning the yard again. Still nothing. But someone had been here. The house was just as I'd left it, or so it seemed. I checked the locks on the windows, the doors, even the garage. Everything was secure. But the unease wouldn't leave me. I made my way upstairs, my movements cautious and deliberate. When I reached my bedroom, I froze. The red box was gone. My chest tightened as I scanned the room, searching for any sign of disturbance. The bedspread was still neat, my nightstand undisturbed, but the box, the note, and the CD were nowhere to be found. Had I moved it and forgotten? Was I losing my mind? I rifled through my closet, yanking open drawers and tossing aside the other boxes. My hands shook as I pulled out the blue one, then the gold, and then a silver. Each box was intact, their contents untouched. But the red one, the sound of footsteps creaking downstairs made my heart stop. I froze, straining to listen. The footsteps were faint but deliberate, moving slowly across the hardwood floor. Someone was in my house. Adrenaline surged through me as I grabbed the nearest heavy object, a lamp from my nightstand. My mind raced with possibilities. Was it Matt? Tony? Or was it someone else entirely? The footsteps stopped. The silence was deafening, more terrifying than the sound of movement. I edged toward the door, gripping the lamp tightly. Peeking into the hallway, I saw nothing but shadows. The stairs loomed ahead, a yawning black void leading down into the unknown. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. Step by step, I descended, every creak of the old wood echoing like a gunshot. My palms were slick with sweat, my grip on the lamp unsteady. When I reached the bottom, the living room was empty. Or so it seemed. The curtains fluttered slightly, caught in a breeze that shouldn't exist. I scanned the room, my eyes landing on the back door. It was unlocked again. A chill ran down my spine. Whoever had been here was gone now. Or were they? I locked the door again, triple-checking it this time. My hands trembled as I picked up my phone, dialing Angie's number. "Hello," she answered, her voice groggy. "Angie," I whispered. "Someone's been in my house." There was a pause, then a sharp intake of breath. "Jessica, call the police. Right now." I can't," I stammered. "What if it's nothing? What if they're already gone?" "Jessica, listen to me. You're scared for a reason. Call them." Her words settled over me like a weight. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. "Okay," but I didn't call. The night passed in restless silence. I barricaded myself in my room, shoving a chair under the doorknob and sleeping with the lamp still clutched in my hand. My dreams were fragmented, filled with shadows and whispers that sounded too much like my own voice. When morning came, I felt no relief, only the oppressive weight of unanswered questions. As I stepped outside to retrieve the mail, I nearly dropped the stack of envelopes. Sitting on the porch was the red box, pristine and undisturbed, as if it had never left. My stomach churned as I reached for it, half expecting it to vanish the moment I touched it. Inside was another note, this one written in the same precise handwriting as before. "You cannot hide from the truth. The answers are closer than you think." Beneath the note was a small key, its metal cool against my palm. A key to what? I glanced around the street, my eyes scanning the parked cars and nearby houses. The sense of being watched was overwhelming, but no one was there. Clutching the key tightly, I went back inside, locking the door behind me. Whatever was happening, it wasn't over. I stared at the key in my hand, the metal biting into my palm as I clenched it. Its design was simple, no markings, no hint of its purpose. But its weight was suffocating, heavy with meaning I couldn't yet understand. My phone buzzed on the kitchen counter, pulling me out of my thoughts. I rushed to grab it, my breath hitching as I saw the message. "Did you find it? The truth is waiting." The unknown number again. My chest tightened as I read the words over and over, hoping they'd somehow make sense if I looked long enough. My mind raced through possibilities. Was it Matt? Tony? Someone else I had unknowingly wronged? I didn't reply. Instead, I sat at the table, the key and the phone in front of me, my thoughts churning. The person behind this wasn't just watching. They knew me. Intimately. The kind of knowledge only someone close could have. The truth is waiting. But what truth? By midday, I was pacing the living room like a caged animal, the tension in my chest unbearable. I couldn't sit still, couldn't think straight. My gaze kept drifting to the red box on the coffee table, the note inside taunting me. I grabbed the key and my coat, deciding that staying here any longer would drive me insane. If this key was meant to lead me somewhere, I'd find out where. My first stop was Matt's auto shop. I hadn't seen him in months, not since the last time we'd spoken, when he looked at me with a mixture of heartbreak and disgust that still haunted me. But if anyone could give me answers, it was him. As I pulled into the gravel parking lot, my nerves almost got the best of me. His truck was parked out front, and the sound of tools clinking echoed from the open garage. I parked and stepped out, the key burning a hole in my pocket. Matt emerged from under the hood of a car, wiping his hands on a rag. When his eyes met mine, they darkened. "What are you doing here, Jessica?" His voice was cold, clipped. "I need to talk to you," I said, my voice wavering. "It's important," he scoffed, tossing the rag onto the workbench. "It always is with you." "Please," I begged, stepping closer. I think someone's following me." That got his attention. His brows furrowed, and he crossed his arms. "What are you talking about?" I hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. "I've been getting these messages. And this." I pulled the key from my pocket, holding it up. His eyes narrowed as he studied it. "What's it for?" "I don't know," I admitted. "I thought maybe you." "Me?" he interrupted, his voice rising. "You think I'm behind this?" No, You're unbelievable, he snapped, stepping back. You ruin everything, and now you're dragging me into this? His words hit like a slap, but I couldn't back down. Matt, please. I don't know who else to turn to. Not my problem, he said, turning away. Desperation clawed at me. Do you want to know why I left? He froze. Slowly, he turned back, his expression unreadable. I left because I didn't think I deserved you, I said, my voice trembling. Because I thought I'd ruin you if I stayed. His jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Now someone is trying to destroy me, I continued, my eyes filling with tears. And I think it's someone who knows both of us. He exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. You need to leave, Jessica, before you drag me into something I can't fix. I wanted to argue, to plead, but the look in his eyes stopped me. The drive home was a blur of frustration and fear. I'd thought Matt might help, but I should have known better. He was done with me. When I pulled into the driveway, the sight of my front door ajar sent my heart plummeting. I hadn't left it open. My hands shook as I approached, the key clutched tightly in my fist. The house was silent, too silent. Who's there? I called, my voice trembling. No response. I stepped inside, every nerve in my body screaming at me to turn back. The living room was empty, but the red box was gone again. This wasn't random. Whoever was doing this wanted me to feel helpless, exposed. I made my way upstairs, each step heavier than the last. When I reached my bedroom, I stopped cold. The red box was back, sitting neatly on my bed. But this time, it wasn't empty. Inside was a photograph of me, asleep in this very room. The photograph of me sleeping wasn't just an invasion. It was a declaration. Someone had been here, in my house, watching me. My hands trembled as I held the glossy print, its edges digging into my fingertips. My face in the photo was serene, unaware of the intruder's presence. The thought of someone standing over me, capturing this moment, sent shivers down my spine. Every muscle in my body screamed to run, but where would I go? Beneath the photo was another note, written in that same precise, clinical handwriting. You see now? There's nowhere to hide. The words blurred as hot tears filled my eyes. I dropped the photo and the note onto the bed, backing away as if they might reach out and grab me. My breathing quickened, each inhale sharp and jagged. I was not safe, not here, not anywhere. The next morning, I decided to leave the house. I needed answers, and sitting in my bedroom, paralyzed by fear, wasn't going to provide them. The key burned in my pocket, its significance taunting me with every step I took toward my car. The streets were eerily empty as I drove, my fingers gripping the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles turned white. I didn't have a destination, only the faint hope that driving might clear my head. Half an hour later, I found myself parked outside an old storage facility on the edge of town. It was the kind of place you barely noticed. Rows of faded orange doors tucked behind a chain-link fence. The key. Was this it? The thought planted itself in my mind, unshakable. The facility had always been there, a quiet, unassuming part of the town. But now, it loomed large, a puzzle piece that might hold the answers I desperately needed. I stepped out of the car, the wind biting against my skin. The front office was deserted, a faded, open sign hanging crookedly in the window. A bell jingled weakly as I pushed the door open. Behind the counter, an older man with a weathered face looked up from a crossword puzzle. Need a unit? He asked, barely glancing at me. Actually, I said, pulling the key from my pocket. I think I already have one. His eyes shifted to the key, his expression sharpening. He set down his pencil and leaned forward. What number? I hesitated, glancing at the key. There was no number, no marking of any kind. I don't know. The man frowned, his gaze narrowing. You're not supposed to be here, are you? Panic bubbled in my chest. I think someone's been using this place to leave me messages. He cut me off, his tone cold. If you don't know the number, I can't help you. Best you leave. Something in his voice sent a chill through me. He knew something, I was sure of it. Please, I begged. It's important. My safety. I said leave. He snapped, his hand drifting beneath the counter. The unspoken threat hung heavy in the air. I backed away, heart racing. "Fine," I said, my voice trembling. "I'm leaving." Back in the car, my thoughts raced. That man knew something, but he wasn't going to help me. Not willingly. I drove a few blocks down and parked, waiting until the facility was out of sight. Then I turned off the car and stared at the key. If there was a door it belonged to, I was going to find it, whether that man liked it or not. I waited until dusk, when the fading light made it easier to go unnoticed. With the key tucked into my coat pocket, I slipped back through the chain-link fence, staying low and quiet. The rows of storage units stretched endlessly, their orange doors a maze of possibilities. My footsteps echoed faintly on the pavement, the sound swallowed by the growing darkness. Then, I saw it. Unit 45. The lock was old, the metal corroded and brittle, but it had a small indentation that matched the key perfectly. My hand shook as I inserted the key and turned it. The lock clicked open with an ominous finality. I hesitated, my pulse hammering in my ears. Behind this door was something that might explain the notes, the photographs, the threats. Taking a deep breath, I lifted the door. The interior was pitch black, the air thick and stale. I fumbled for my phone, switching on the flashlight. The beam illuminated a space filled with boxes, dozens of them, stacked haphazardly. Each box was labeled with my name. My knees went weak as I stepped inside, the light trembling in my hand. On the nearest box was a note, pinned like a sinister afterthought. "It is all here, Jessica. Everything you tried to forget." I swallowed hard, my breath coming in shallow gasps. My hand hovered over the lid of the first box, the weight of the truth pressing down on me. Whatever lay inside, it would change everything. My hand trembled as it hovered over the box, the flashlight in my other hand casting jagged shadows against the metal walls of the storage unit. Each breath I took was loud in the suffocating silence, the kind of silence that warned you not to go further. But I couldn't stop now. Gingerly, I pried open the lid of the first box. Inside was a pile of photographs, their edges worn as though they had been handled over and over. I picked up the top one, holding it up to the light. It was a picture of me. I was laughing, my head thrown back, my hand brushing against someone just out of frame. A memory stirred. This was from years ago, during a summer barbecue. I had been with Matt then. I rifled through more photos. Each one chronicled my life with chilling precision. Moments I thought were private, stolen glimpses of my most vulnerable days. There was one of me crying in my car, another of me staring out my kitchen window, lost in thought. Who had taken these? A chill crawled up my spine as I realized the timestamps on the back of each photo spanned years. This wasn't recent. Someone had been watching me for a long time. At the bottom of the box was a note, written in the same neat, familiar handwriting as the others. "You never noticed, did you? How close I've always been." The words made my stomach churn. Whoever this was, they hadn't just appeared in my life. They had been there all along. I turned to the next box, unable to stop myself. It was heavier than the first, and when I opened it, the metallic scent hit me immediately. Inside was a knife, its blade dull but stained with a dark, rust-colored residue. My hands shook as I picked up the blade, its weight unnerving. Attached to the hilt was a tag, and on it was written a single word: justice. I dropped the knife as though it burned me, the clang reverberating through the unit. My flashlight flickered, casting the room into momentary darkness before stabilizing again. My heart pounded as I backed away from the box, while rising in my throat. This was no longer just a game. Whoever had been tormenting me wanted me to feel their pain, their anger, and now they wanted me to know what they were capable of. The next box was smaller, more like a jewelry case. I hesitated before opening it, my instinct screaming at me to leave. But I couldn't stop. Inside was a bracelet, a delicate silver chain I hadn't seen in years. My breath hitched as I realized it had been a gift from Tony, given to me during the early days of our relationship. I had lost it years ago, during one of our many arguments. How had it ended up here? As I stared at the bracelet, memories of Tony flooded back. His charm, his temper, the way he could make me feel like the center of the universe one moment and nothing the next. Was this his doing? I slammed the box shut, my pulse racing. I couldn't stay here. I stumbled out of the storage unit, gasping for air. The wind howled through the rows of orange doors, carrying with it the faint creak of something moving. "Hello?" I called, my voice trembling. The only response was the whistle of the wind. I turned to lock the unit, my fingers fumbling with the padlock. That was when I saw it. A figure standing at the end of the row, cloaked in shadow. My breath caught, and the key slipped from my hand. "Who's there?" I shouted, my voice echoing. The figure didn't move. Adrenaline surged through me as I grabbed the key and locked the unit with shaking hands. When I looked back, the figure was gone. I didn't wait to see if they would return. I bolted for my car, my heart hammering in my chest. The sound of my footsteps seemed to echo louder than they should have, each step reverberating like a warning. I reached my car and yanked the door open, slamming it shut behind me. My hands fumbled with the keys as I started the engine. The headlights flooded the parking lot, but there was no sign of anyone. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. The drive home was a blur, my thoughts racing faster than the car. Who was behind this? And what did they want? As I pulled into my driveway, I hesitated, my grip tightening on the steering wheel. My house, once a sanctuary, now felt like a trap. I stepped out cautiously, the key to the storage unit still clutched in my hand. My gaze darted around the yard, scanning for any signs of movement. The porch light flickered as I approached the door, my unease growing with each step. When I reached the door, I froze. A new box was waiting for me. This one was black, and on top of it was a note, scrawled in hurried handwriting that sent shivers down my spine. "It is time to face the truth. Or are you still running?" I swallowed hard, the weight of the note pressing down on me. Whoever this was, they weren't going to stop until I opened that box. I stood on my porch, staring at the black box. The note taunted me, the words seared into my mind. "It is time to face the truth. Or are you still running?" I was done running. With trembling hands, I picked up the box and stepped inside, locking the door behind me. The house felt unnaturally quiet, as though it too was waiting for what was about to happen. I carried the box to the kitchen, setting it on the table. The air felt heavy, suffused with the weight of everything I had uncovered. I took a deep breath and opened the lid. Inside was a phone, an older model, battered and scratched. Its screen lit up as soon as I touched it, revealing a single video file. The title read, "Watch Me." My stomach churned. Whoever was behind this had planned every detail, and now they were leading me to the final moment. I tapped the screen, and the video began to play. The footage was grainy, taken at night. The camera panned across a dimly lit room, my room. I watched, horrified, as the figure in the video moved with purpose. They rifled through my drawers, pulled my clothes from the closet, and even lingered by my bedside, staring down at my sleeping form. My pulse thundered in my ears. The camera shifted, the angle tilting to show the intruder's face. It was Matt. I recoiled, nearly knocking the phone off the table. This had to be a mistake, a trick, a cruel fabrication. But the video didn't stop. In it, Matt spoke to the camera, his voice low and filled with venom. "You broke me, Jessica," he said. "You took everything we had and burned it to the ground. Now it is your turn to feel what I felt." Tears blurred my vision. This wasn't the Matt I knew, the man who had loved me, who had fought for us. This was someone else, someone consumed by pain and rage. The screen went dark for a moment before another message appeared. "You can't undo what you did, but you can face it." I dropped the phone, my chest heaving as sobs overtook me. Hours passed as I sat at the table, the phone still lying where I had dropped it. The pieces of the puzzle were clear now. Matt had been behind it all. The red box, the photos, the storage unit. It was all his way of making me confront my mistakes, my betrayal, and I had nowhere left to hide. The sound of a car engine pulled me from my thoughts. I looked out the window and saw Matt's truck idling at the curb. He was here. I stepped outside, the cold night air biting at my skin. Matt got out of the truck, his expression unreadable. "I know," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. He stood there for a moment, his hands shoved into his pockets. "Good. Then you know why I did it." "You could have talked to me," I said, my voice trembling. You didn't have to do all of this. Matt laughed bitterly. Talk to you? You didn't listen when I begged you to stay. You didn't listen when I told you I loved you. Why would you listen now? I shook my head, tears streaming down my face. I made mistakes, Matt. I hurt you. I know that. But this isn't you. He stepped closer, his eyes flashing with anger. You do not get to tell me who I am. Not after everything you did. I'm sorry, I said, my voice breaking. I'm so sorry. For a moment, I thought he might soften, that the man I had once loved might resurface. But then he turned away, walking back toward his truck. You will never understand, he said over his shoulder. And I do not care if you do. The engine roared to life, and moments later, he was gone. That night, I sat alone in the house, the weight of everything crushing down on me. The phone, the boxes, the memories, they were all pieces of a life I had destroyed. Matt was right about one thing. I could never undo what I had done. But as I sat there, staring at the black box, I realized I had a choice. I could let this destroy me, or I could start over. And so, as the first light of dawn broke through the windows, I began packing. This house, this town, this life, it was all a reminder of the mistakes I could not fix. But somewhere out there was a chance to rebuild, to be someone better. And this time, I would not run.